Welcome to the ArcaneMystic, your weekly sanctuary for health, well-being and spiritual exploration. Whether you're delving into the healing power of frequency medicines, uncovering hidden wisdom, or seeking a deeper connection on your journey back to self, this podcast is a guide to the mystical side of life. Join us each week as we explore ancient practices, modern techniques, and timeless truths that help you unlock your true potential. We bring together a community of like-minded souls who are passionate about spiritual growth and personal transformation. This podcast is about the soul's journey and the wisdom that lies within. So if you're ready to elevate your mind, body and spirit, subscribe to the ArcaneMystic today. Let's awaken the inner mystic and embark on a journey of discovery together. Remember, the journey to self is the most powerful journey of all. Hello, and welcome to this broadcast of the Arcane Mystic. Today we have the wonderful Logan Hart. And Logan is a spiritual student and teacher, philosopher, who runs the podcast, and a really good one at that, the Wizard Factory podcast. Now, Logan is a musician, voice actor, and an entrepreneur living near Dallas. He's also an anarchist, an animist, pagan, light occultist. And his spiritual journey has brought him to this point that he is at now, which is studying the areas of natural law, metaphysics, psychology, healing, shamanism, paganism, and so much more. And I know that many of you at the moment have got questions about the system, about the way that we're living, about the way that things are done. So Logan, without further ado, hello.
Hello, Elona. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for being here today. And I spoke to you a bit earlier and I saw something, and I think that this is where I want to kick off with. There was a video from the 1970s in the UK, and it was about an old woman, she was peeling a potato. And she was just saying, that a lot of why she thinks that people are sad and not themselves, not a really, high vibration and all the rest of it, is because of the food that we're eating, the system that we're living in. It could be also be of governance systems, and made me think that a lot of your work is looking at the system that we're living in and how it's not working for people. And you share a lot of wisdom about this. What are your thoughts on the system that we're currently living in at the moment?
What a great question, and definitely a good one to just go ahead and dive right into the depths of this because, yeah, it's an important part of the big picture, but it's not the end goal. It tends to be more of the front end. I know for me, when I started kind of waking up, as they say, it's really easy to get very obsessed with the system and the oppression and oh they're doing this and oh they're doing that and we're such victims, and all of those things are true. It's horrifying, but the longer you're in that awareness, you start to kind of accept, like, okay, the world is very different than we're taught, and that's just the reality. So you have to come to terms with that. But then you start needing to ask yourself, what's next? Am I going to live as a victim for the rest of my life and just obsess over every little detail of every false flag and every psyop and all of this stuff, and ask yourself, is that really serving me? Is that really making my life better or even making me any more free? This is incredibly important. So I think the next step, once you've sort of come to terms with the reality of the matrix, is, okay, how can I start taking my power back? And that is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's piece by piece. You start making better, more conscious choices with what you eat, what
Hmm.
you put into your mind, your mental diet. And then what are ways that you can live in your personal sovereignty and autonomy that the government or some police officer or military member isn't standing right there in your face with a gun pointed at you or something like that. There's no one there actually stopping you. And so maybe you find that you're more free in ways you didn't realize, even though at the beginning you realized we're a lot less free than we thought.
Hmm.
but then you kind of like reframe the whole narrative, and you find ways to live in more freedom in your own life, simply because you realize you don't have to ask permission to be who you are and to live in freedom. Because freedom, first of all, we have to know what these words mean. These words get thrown around all the time. What is freedom? Well, freedom, true freedom, because it's not just about my freedom, right? If it was my freedom, I could just go around doing whatever I wanted, and sure, I'd be free, but can you really call it freedom when my actions are destroying freedom all around me?
Mm.
See, so when I use the word freedom, I'm talking about holistic freedom, the state of freedom as it exists for the species and the family of humanity. And this means my freedom ends where yours begins. So freedom actually, or a right? You understand your rights. You can't know if you're oppressed or if your rights are being taken away if you don't even know what that word means. So what is a right? A right is simply any action that is not initiating harm upon another living person. So I can do whatever I want as long as it's not hurting anyone. And you might not like it, and that's fine too, because I probably don't like some things that you do. And that's the beauty of freedom. It's okay to disagree, as long as we're not going around like, well, I don't like that you did that, and now I think that I have the right to stop you, or force you to not do that thing, which it sounds obvious, but then most people are going around advocating that the government should do these things, right? Like, well, you probably, or any given person probably wouldn't have the balls to actually, go forcibly stop someone else from doing something that they don't like, even though it's not hurting anyone. But they don't bat an eye for saying, well, there should be a law against this and this and this, never even thinking and contemplating the depths of what they're actually advocating, which is violence, which is immoral always. Unless, I mean, we're not talking about self-defense, which I call force, not violence. I make that distinction because to be violent, it has to be violating someone else, right? So I mean, yeah, I know there's a lot of different directions we could go just off of that. That's why I said that's such a great question, because it just branches right into the whole tapestry. But yeah, ultimately the system, you need to understand the world you live in and how things work, and you need to understand what is moral and what is not moral, because that's going to create a huge radical shift in your worldview. And it's going to shock you, the things that, like I said, that people advocate and vote for and things like this on a daily basis that are just wrong. They're immorally, wrong. And that is the key to everything. When we understand and begin to live in alignment with objective morality, not my truth and your truth, or what I prefer or what you prefer, but the truth morally, that is the only thing that's actually going to create a true condition of freedom for everyone on this planet.
And the thing is, as well, with that, is a great analogy. Thank you for that. Freedom really comes from within. If you feel that you're stuck or you're a prisoner,
Hmm.
you'll remain so, you know? And
Yes.
yes, there's this kind of system that sits in place. But as we both know, there's also, I feel like we're living in a world within a world. There's a world that they're trying to put into a system framework that was already here, that our ancestors lived in accordance with, which is more based on natural law, in the way that things could be if we all kind of grouped together again and remembered who we were, our past, and there's so much that sits, and the system now is like different layers, and the more aware you become, the more you understand the layers, and you'll go down rabbit holes. There'll be bits that you'll unlearn. You'll do that with food, you'll do that with health, you'll do that with so many different things. I've done it. I've tried all of it. And all of us have different ways of figuring out that something's not quite right here, that the world that we're living in at the moment is really quite a strange place, is what I will say. It's not what it said on the tin, it's not what we were taught about in school. What was your aha moment that things just weren't correct here?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's definitely about the the imposition, or I like the word grafting. They've grafted this false reality on top of reality, which I like to use the word nature as a synonym for reality, because it's not just what is, but it's why it is. It's how it works, right? So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that, but to answer your question, it was definitely a very long process for me, and it's ongoing. I mean, I would my first wave, or my first red pill, I guess you could say, was probably around 2008. I was days away from getting uh, asked to leave the military in the Air Force. And my friends showed me this documentary that had like pieces of different films, like Loose Change and some Alex Jones stuff. So it was kind of this modge podge that gives you this overview of the New World Order with, the Federal Reserve and 9/11, and kind of just these key pieces that make it kind of like shock you awake and make you go, whoa, if that's a lie, what else is a lie? And you just kind of goes from there. But um, you know, even you might even consider before that, I kind of was disillusioned from my religious upbringing. So that might be actually more like the first wave of me beginning to question anything about just simply how I was raised, was, questioning that. And of course, like many people, I sort of swung all the way in the other direction towards like atheism, scientism, not almost nihilism, really. And then through experimentation with psychedelics and looking into other things, like, I mean, as cheesy as it is, spirit science, learning about sacred geometry, the golden
Mhm.
ratio, and all these kind of things, all at the same time. That's when I started going, okay, well, I still think religion's bullshit, but now I'm thinking there's probably more to reality than just, you know, uh, um, empirical evidence that we can observe directly with our five senses and all of this kind of stuff. And so from there, I really became interested in subjects like the occult,
Mhm.
just psychology, which, I mean, that's a part of it, in my opinion. I describe the occult as a synthesis of psychology and natural law, which are simply just the internal and external governing factors. It's the as within, so without. It's the correspondence principle there. And in that process, I came across ideas from people like Larkin Rose and Mark Passio and many others, but those were the main ones that made me become an anarchist, which, so that's another scary word that most people have no idea what it actually means, simply because every time it's used in a movie or a book or any kind of pop culture, it's almost synonymous with chaos, which ironically, that's exactly the opposite of what it is, because chaos is slavery, chaos is violence, and anarchy means the absence of rulers, not no rules. It doesn't mean no rules, it means no rulers. And without an archons, the in the Greek. So it means that no one is your master. It means you're not a slave. That's literally all it means. And whether it's a king or a president or some mugger in the street, those are all forms of tyrants. They're trying to force their way on you and violate one of your rights in some kind of way. And so anarchy is simply the acknowledgement that I own myself, I'm no one's property, and no one has any authority over me. That's it. So it's just stepping into your own personal sovereignty as a divine being. So that was a big part of my journey. And those are really the big pieces, I would say, that all were kind of moving me towards, especially natural law and occultism, because that really is the body that contains all of that.
Yeah. The
Natural
proper
law
sign.
is morality. It is sovereignty. It's personal responsibility. It's
Mhm.
spiritual meaning, and the framework in which, I mean, you know, To be a spiritual being means you're a human living in a body, having this experience of reality, aka nature, as I say, and nature is governed by laws. And those laws are consequential. They're about behavior. And so we're on this journey, the spiritual journey. The journey is all about making choices and asking questions, and those choices lead to outcomes that teach you about yourself and the world that you live in. So that is it. That's everything. And so especially of matters of morality, that's the bullseye when it comes to understanding like good and bad choices, right? Because when you cause harm, you're hurting not only others, but you're hurting yourself,
Mhm.
both from a karmic level and just an objective. You're saying through your actions that this is the world that I want to live in, where people lie and steal and cheat and assault and rape and so on and so forth. So, like you need to live in alignment with what you wish to see in the world that you want. You want to be the world that you want to live in through your actions and through your being and by example.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in a nutshell my journey. And as I said, it's ongoing. I went through sort of this polarity phase, was probably the most recent paradigm shift that I had regarding just, where polarity meets biology in the masculine and the feminine. You know what I mean? That, you know, men and women are fundamentally different, and that's a good thing. And we should live in alignment with that, both from an energetic level and a biological hormonal level as well. And those things are all interconnected. And that's where our power is, not only as individuals and how we show up in the world, but how we relate, especially intimately. But that's a whole other wormhole or, rabbit hole we could go down. So,
Because a lot of people are waking up now and they're being red pilled. It's not, we kind of had a gradual situation where we were able to maybe have a little dip in, come back out again. Because 2008, really, when you think about it, up to 2020, you had a good 12 years to, take your time and really learn stuff. Since 2020, people have not had that opportunity. And it was because they were looking in another direction. I woke up quite early as well. I think I was always kind of there. Same thing with religion, just didn't really resonate with it. Mine was the music industry. That was my way in when I started looking at symbolism that way. And
mm,
then just worked in corporate for a long time. And then I just thought, this pays so much money. Like, I love the money, hate the job. Soul destroying, unfulfilling, just wasn't really doing much for me. And then I ended up looking at the occult stuff as well. And do you know, it calls you. It does. And everybody's got that innate calling that sits within us. It's just whether we listen or not. And also, I gave up all my distractions. So I got like, didn't watch TV, didn't do any of that for a bit. And when you turn these things off, like they just take a whole, it's like a black spray on your third eye. You can't see, you can't do anything outside of that remit. Turn all the soaps off, like in the UK, you've got EastEnders and all these different shows that are they're just not real. And then you take sobriety, and that is living in reality. You start thinking, okay, what can I do now that I'm not doing that? And I start filling it with creativity, different things that I could do, like artistic stuff. I started learning to read tarot, and I didn't even use the Rider-Waite. The ones that I used they were called Titianas, and they all they had was like pictures, but something within me grew. And for those of you that are waking up and don't quite know which way to go and feel a bit nervous about it, or you've just had a massive awakening, start small and do the small things every single day. Just take your baby steps.
mm.
Start, really maybe watch podcasts, look at what there's other teachings out there. There's also traps, as you know. How many things have you gone on to learn that actually didn't work for you, Logan? That, rabbit holes that you've gone down and you're like, oh, okay, right, yeah, now it's time to come back to the center. Have you had those experiences?
Sure. And I always try to find the kernel of truth
Hmm.
or at least practicality in each of those. So yeah, I went down lots of rabbit holes, and I guess so. Like the New Age sphere would be one example of that, where there's a lot of mind control. There's a lot of what I call spiritual cul-de-sacs that
Hmm.
lock you in, and then you're just going nowhere. There's no, you know, but there's still a lot of value there,
Hmm.
and I still have little pieces of that with me, but it's more the philosophical and kind of mindsets around that that even isn't necessarily wrong. It's imbalanced. And that right there is a huge key to all of this, is that it's like where they get you is the black and white, where
Hmm.
it's like everything's either right or wrong. Every person is either an angel or a demon, right? We either want to just vilify them, cancel them, destroy them, or exalt them as a god, like that is the mind control. It's called Hegelian dialectics, it's called polarization techniques. This is what they use to manipulate people because they cling to it because they feel that there's some truth there. And so they can't let go, even though it's causing such dysfunction.
Hmm.
And the real medicine and the real wisdom is being able to sift through that and understand where, like, what's useful without throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. And it's about the
So,
balance. It is about
yes,
balance. And it's
yes.
learning
So,
when to bring yourself back into balance, but you have to sometimes go way off or way
yes,
right.
yes. Well, you have to learn where those boundaries are. Where's the end so that you can start to find the middle between. So, like, just one example, again, taking from this kind of new age sphere would be like acceptance and tolerance. There's value in that.
Mhm.
But if you're too accepting and too tolerant, well, that's the perfect slave because you'll never say no. You'll never stand up. You'll never defend yourself. You're just like, everything is exactly as it should be right in this moment, and everything is perfect. And it's like, that's a useful like thing to embody at times. If you're stuck in traffic, you're stuck in traffic. Getting mad about it's not going to do anything. But when you're looking at just encroaching tyranny and abuse from the system, that's you should not accept that. You should be saying no, and the more people live like that, the more they'll back off because they know like the people do have the power, but only when they actually take it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So
It's
that's
never
just one
given.
example. Right,
Power's never
right.
given. You have to take it.
Hmm.
And small ways that this can be done. It could be going to the local farmer and boycotting the bigger supermarket chains, that are selling
Hmm.
really bad
Hmm.
food. It could be supporting your friend's smaller business. It's all of these, it's small acts that become the bigger things. And then that way, we're not focusing on all of the things that are so wrong within this system because we're doing the little things that are right. Yeah. And that can really help to build something more collectively. And on your journey with this, you've ended up back on an ancestral pathway. How did that happen?
Hmm. Well, it just sort of happened, I guess, through exposure of, um, so I actually started the podcast with a friend who is no longer part of the platform anymore. We had a falling out, unfortunately. So, um, without going into too much detail about the dirty laundry there, um, you know, I had met this person and he started teaching me about Norse paganism, animism, the runes, things like that. This was all around the same time in 2019. And so there was definitely something that just really resonated with me uh, because I was like primed for it. I already had a strong understanding of natural law, but what's ironic is I didn't actually consciously have the mindset yet that is even more fundamental. It let me see if I can explain this because it's a little bit abstract. So animism is the root of paganism, which is the root of all religions or spirituality before Christianity for the most part, or Abrahamic, influence. So it was the default across the board, not by any imposition or forced conversions. That's Abrahamic shit. We're not talking about that. It was natural. There's that word again. It was where people naturally arrive to when they're living in harmony with nature, when they're observing nature, they're receiving her wisdom, and you become an animist, which is just seeing nature as the teacher, and we are part of that too. So we're not separate from nature. Nature is us, we are it, and it's all one ecosystem. Yeah. And so, like, you kind of have to understand that to truly understand natural law, because that's just this sort of nuts and bolts of how that mindset is applied in your life, right? Because if it's not practical, then really what value is it? You have to be able to use it in your life. That's real spirituality, because life is about living, not just sitting around like meditating or philosophizing all day. So yeah, basically, the more I dug into it, the more I understood like animism was a big part of what was missing from my worldview, that sort of really connected all the dots. And then when I had that realization and integrated that, then by default, I felt more connected to our ancestors, to the old ways, and just how people lived for probably tens or hundreds of thousands of years up before organized religion came and just destroyed spirituality.
Hmm. And that's a really, really amazing analogy because so many people are returning to nature now. And for those of you that are feeling a bit lost and don't know who your ancestors are or don't quite know the way to go into the forest. Do it a lot. Doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes, half an hour. Just go and listen to the water running or the birds singing. Just these small things, because what it does is it disconnects you from the system that they're trying to overlay on the system that was already there. And animism, I first saw that in Aboriginal. They were really, it was more about nature, the land. I've researched quite a few different ancient cultures, ancestral ways of different cultures from around the world. They were all pagans, every single one of them, before we got to this point that we're at now. I've got quite a lot of mix within me. So I thought, okay, I don't know which one to go with. I'm going to look at all of them, and they were very similar.
Mhm.
They had their deities that they would have worshipped or that they would have done their offerings for. They had their altars. They all lived in alignment with nature because they knew to harm nature was to harm oneself. To harm another was to harm nature. It was all, the morals were there. So the behavior was. And with the
Yes.
behavior there was the awareness. And with the awareness was a connection to the divine. They didn't need any middlemen to tell them who to be or how to do things. There was also, I believe, magic in those points in time as well, because it's part of the natural order of things. And I feel that
Absolutely.
magic's coming back. It's always been there, but people are
Hmm.
becoming more aware of it. And this is where you've seen the rise of different people doing the things the way that the ancestors, would do things. And a lot of that's not, we can't do all of it now. We need to take what we can that's relevant to our now. But the main message for everybody out there that are walking an ancestral way, seek what they were seeking.
Hmm. That's why if you look at my channel, I have several videos with titles like modern paganism, modern day wizards, things like this, because it's not just about trying to go backwards in time
Mhm.
and just treat it like a religion and just, oh well, if we just do everything exactly like they did, then somehow that's better. You have to bring that forward into the present moment, because that's what they were doing. They were adapting things and making it modern for their time, even though it's ancient to us. But I love the way you explained all that. That was really eloquently said. And yes, the nature has always been there.
Yeah.
And we have access to it, at least now, before we just get corralled into these like cities with high walls and stuff. But and I say that sort of halfway jokingly, but you just look at the way things went when when Christianity was first spreading, they would ban things like going into nature or having gatherings or witchcraft. And it's like they're giving themselves away by the very thing that they're trying to stop from happening. They're telling you exactly what the good stuff is and what like has empowerment, right? They want you disempowered, so they're going to tell you not to do those things. But that's the beautiful thing is today in 2025, you can go in the woods by yourself and have almost the exact same experience that your ancestor did.
Okay.
When you leave the phone behind and you can hear the same spirits and the same voices and the same wisdom coming through trying to connect with you and you connect with it, it's exactly the same. And, any differences is sort of artificial and ancillary, but that's the thing is like at this point people are so brainwashed and domesticated that they don't have to ban that stuff anymore. Because ew, nature's icky and like, oh, out there with all the bugs and like who wants that? I'll just stay here and eat my vegan fish tacos and watch Netflix, like that's way easier. But and you know what? That's spiritual too.
Mhm.
That's the animist and paganist mindset too, is that everything is a spiritual experience, whether you're tra you know tra transcendental meditating or speaking to the gods or going to the woods to take a piss. Like it's all spiritual, but there is different levels of connection.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's so important to spend that solitude connecting with nature and with yourself, which is one and the same. You need to connect with yourself. Like that's another thing. Like I had this realization when I was really studying mind control. That's kind of one of my specialties. And anyone that does check out my channel, I highly recommend if you only watch one video, it's my trivium hacking presentation. It's long, but it is like the master blueprint for mind control, how it works, but also how to get out of that. But I had this realization that basically all mind control and all their manipulation and techniques and stuff that they do, the one underlying common thing that they all have is it's trying to disconnect you from nature and from yourself.
Yeah.
That's it. And so by doing that, which, like I said, no one is actually stopping you from doing that, that is the single most defiant, rebellious act that you could do.
It's
Isn't that
simple.
awesome and empowering that you could do that?
It's
And
simple.
you'll see the growth and the maturement and the realizations that you'll have in
Mhm.
that process. Like there's nothing beats it.
Just the preface on my book, from my book, The Road to Sovereignty, have the wisdom to abandon the values of a time that has passed and pick out the constituents of the future. An environment must be suited to the age and the men to their environment. And that's an Egyptian proverb. And this is where we are now. Because what we're going through now, some parts of it may have happened then, the mind control side of it anyway. But we're living in a very different kind of frequency field. Um, I believe that they had technology back then, but I think it was different to what we have now. And I also feel that with it, with going out in nature, with the rise of AI and the artificial intelligence side that sits there, spending loads of time online, we don't know what's real and what's not anymore at the moment. It's all a little bit weird, really weird. Even videos, like people love videos of people being out in nature. They've got the same opportunities. Get outside.
Yes.
It's wild, and going out to see the moon and doing different things. And another thing is that once you start walking the way that your ancestors were walking, all of that dormant energy in your DNA, it starts lighting itself up. It just lights up, and then you know the way, but it comes from within. And one of the biggest things that we've not been taught is how to trust ourselves. And that's one of the hardest things that we will ever learn to do is trust in ourselves, trust in our intuition. That's another big one. In a system that is trying to tell you to be anything but who you are.
Amen. And I was just kind of being contemplating the beauty and the wonder of the juxtaposition, because we're talking about ancestry, very ancient, you know, times and human beings. They're literally you.
Hmm.
The cells in their body are alive in your blood, right? The DNA, and what I mean by juxtaposition is your body isn't even the same cells that they were like 7 years ago, first of all. So your own body is constantly changing and replenishing itself. But at the same time, the DNA inside your cells is the exact same DNA from your ancestors tens of thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Because we're just, through life and rebirth, like giving birth, you've just created new cells into a new body that's going to live probably longer than you as the parent, and then they go on and they do the same thing. So the cells never actually die. They just go on living in new bodies. That's just kind of crazy to contemplate that. But that's why I think it's so important for us to feel a connection or to build a connection in a relationship to our ancestors and those ways of connecting with nature through talking to the gods, giving offerings, doing ceremonies and rituals and things like that. Because paganism is what I like to define it as practical animism,
Hmm.
meaning you have that mindset of you are nature and nature is you, and that to be a spiritual being is basically the interface of yourself with nature in all these plethora of different experiences that life can have as a man, a woman, an African American, you know, um, all colors, all the things, but it's all same at the fundamental level is just you having an experience interfacing with nature.
Hmm.
And people all those years ago discovered these ways of doing that in a way that's much more empowering, that can actually imbue reality with psychic energy and make outcomes happen, right? That is magic. And that's the power that we all have. And yet the church mostly has tricked most people into thinking that's evil. Imagine thinking that the most powerful thing you can do as a human and that you have a birthright to, that's evil. I mean, how's that for gaslighting? There's so much gaslighting built into that's a big part of the mind control is they
Hmm.
have to belittle you to yourself. You have to believe that you're small and literally feel guilty for existing, right? You have original sin. You need to be saved just for being born. You're that dirty. And definitely you can't govern yourself. So you need a master or ruling class to keep you from being a wild savage and eating people and all that fun stuff, right? That's what they tell you. Whether they come out and say it or not, that's the implication of everything about it is just this guilt, and you're so wretched and horrible and you need all of these things just to have a chance of like redeeming yourself or having a normal life.
Yeah.
It's insane. So there's
Thing
just so
is as
many
well,
layers that you need to shed to get back to yourself, who you truly are, and loving yourself.
on the power versus force chart, that's what I was going to mention. Have you seen that? I'll put it on here. But the emotions that they want us to feel are really low. So it's guilt,
Mm.
shame, frustration, anger, depression, loneliness. That's not divinity. It doesn't feel good. It sucks. It takes the same amount of energy to be happy, joyful, present. Yeah. Because for me, when you're in the lower vibration, you're either anticipating the future or you're thinking about the past, but you're not here now. But nature's here right now. It's growing. The sun's starting to come back again now. It has its cycles. It has its moments where it's low and like maybe winter periods is where everything's died off. It's done its reflection. Maybe not grow stuff there again because it didn't grow quite well. It's going to grow things over there. May think that the tree's going to plant there. Everything just happens as it's meant to because it's present, and everything in our lives can happen, and we can flourish as we're meant to as a transcendental being because we're present. But whatever way we go, we have to make that decision and we have to stick with that. And there'll be moments where we're really low. There'll also be moments that we're feeling really high with things, but find the center of it. But in anything that you do, whether there's a book to tell you what that is or a middleman, you know when something feels wrong. So if it feels wrong and it's going to hurt somebody, just don't do it. And in that way, you're not accruing karma. You don't feel that guilt. You don't feel that shame. You don't go into the lower end of the power versus force chart. And then you can stay in the center.
Yeah, I love that.
Simple.
And and also I would add that you have to have a deep knowing
Mm-hmm,
of morality,
mm-hmm,
because the where it gets tricky is that we're so like manipulated, gaslighted, brainwashed that our emotions are all wonky. So feeling alone isn't always the only thing we can rely on um, to navigate things, because sometimes, like, if say you're talking about guilt and shame, all these negative, like, what if you feel guilty and shameful for when you're stepping into your power, because that's triggering all of that manipulation of, like, oh no, I shouldn't do that, I'm just a slave, right? You keep yourself small. That's going to feel bad,
mm-hmm.
but you should be doing it anyway. You actually need to push through that discomfort, and that's where the healing and the growth happens. And so what I would say, just as a caveat to what you said, I love what you said, but just to kind of add more to it, is, especially when you said if it feels wrong or it's going to hurt somebody, don't do it. That is key, because morality is based in harm and consent. So if it is going to cause harm to someone else, um, or violate their consent in some way, then definitely listen to your conscience when it's telling you no, even though you might, get paid more, or like whatever the incentive is for where this dilemma is happening, that you're weighing it out. Definitely listen to that. That is your conscience. And conscience in Latin means with knowing. Con
Mm-hmm.
is together, or to be together, and sciere, that's where the word science comes from. It's conscience, to know something. So, so many people want to argue against this idea of objective morality, that it's all just what we get to decide. This moral relativism is what created the slavery system to begin with, because it's all about, well, it's the greater good, right? So we need this horrible, violent thing to keep people from being horrible and violent. Like, how does that even make any sense to
Doesn't.
begin with? But it's this idea of the greater good, and like we're sacrificing something, or a necessary evil. That's another big one that they trick people on, to getting them to sort of like sell yourself out and
Mm-hmm.
compromise true principles. So it's not uh with believing, it's not with wishing, or with preferring, it's with knowing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the objective difference between right and wrong, and live in alignment with that, no matter how difficult it is or inconvenient or whatever. You will find a way. You can and will find a way, and the universe will reward moral beings for their courage.
Another thing I want to add to that as well is with regards to if it feels wrong and it doesn't hurt somebody else, when it comes down to relationships, sometimes it could feel wrong to walk away from somebody because you're going to hurt them,
Yes.
but the situation's not right. It's the same with a job, it's the same with anything. But if you're going to hurt more, you still walk away. So it's finding that balance, within that kind of morality and with the systems that we're in, that we're living in. So that's something that I wanted to add. And coming back to ways of being, one thing that I found really fun in this crazy world that we're living in is satire. It's fun, it's laughter, it's joy. And sometimes it's even just some of the things that they put out now. I just laugh because I just think, are they being serious? Like what's,
Yeah.
how are they still here? What's
It's
going
like
on?
they're satirical at this point. They're trolling themselves. It's so absurd.
Exactly. Yeah, it's shocking. I just look at certain advertisements and I don't spend loads of time online because it sucks. It just drains the life force out of you. And there's other things that I want to be doing. But when I do have a look on there, I'm just shocked that people are still buying into the narrative. But I guess I'm not going to mock those people because everything has its place. And I feel that there's some people that were born with a lot of life force energy. And I feel that there's people that have been born with a lot less than that. There's also people that I believe that are kind of here as frequency keepers to like gatekeepers to not allow the system to expand. But then there's people like us that are here that are consciously every day expanding our consciousness to create a system that's different to what we're living in right now. And it is a collective effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing as well with magic, can you just give an explanation to people as to what you think magic is?
Mhm. Yes. So I like to keep things very simple and bring them down to the real world. So forget Harry Potter and
Mhm.
Star Wars and all of these grandiose ideas. There's a lot of truth in those movies, but often, the real world is much more practical, and it's almost like the magic is hidden in the mundane, if you will. It might not look that spectacular, but it's a miracle that's happening. You know what I'm saying? So my definition of magic is essentially when an individual uses their knowledge of how reality works, natural law,
Mhm.
to to create an outcome in alignment with their will. And another distinction is whether you capitalize the W of will. So there's little w will is me, what I want for myself selfishly, no matter who it harms or if it's taking away from someone else to give to me or whatever. That's like the egoic I. Capital will is when you're living as a conduit for the divine
Mhm.
and the will of the creator or what I don't want to get in the weeds with spiritual concepts. I do believe in a higher power, a cosmic intelligence, and I think it's nothing like Yahweh or whatever. So try to separate those ideas. We're just talking about the consciousness of the universe that is the divine mind, the all, as it's spoken of as in Hermetic philosophy. You are living as a vessel and a conduit for the divine will, and that's living through you, because when you're living with that in alignment with that, that's good for you too. It's
Mhm.
like it's like living in your purpose. The universe is going to take care of you when you're living in your purpose because you're doing what you signed up for. That's your dharma, and so you have the karma, right? That comes with that, the positive karma. So that's how I define magic, is using your knowledge of how reality works to create change or an outcome in reality, which is what you wanted. Because you might like cast one spell and then something different happens, and that's a form of magic, but it's kind of tacky and not very good. The idea is, well, I mean, like if you shoot an arrow, you're aiming at the target, but you hit a cat. Like, great job, you hit something, but it's not what you were aiming for. So, good magic is when you actually get the outcome that you were going for. And ideally it's something that is in alignment with natural law as far as the moral aspects of, you know it's good for you, but it's good for other people too. It's, you're being a positive force in the world.
See, love that what you've just said. And Crowley, a lot of people don't like him, but I like his teachings. I like some of what he's written. And one of my favorite things of what he said is that true will is the expression of one's deepest and most authentic self aligned with universal order. And
That's
this
it.
is where we can really work with things. And manifestation, what's your thoughts on that? Because this has become, for me, it's a bit out of hand at the moment, this whole manifestation thing. What's your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on that with the way that people are working with it, for instance?
I love this question. So this is a great example of what we talked about earlier with the new age stuff and how There's a lot of value, but there's also a lot of mistruths and distortions and things like this. So manifestation is a big one. So first of all, manifestation is really what I just described. It's just it's magic. They're pretty much interchangeable. It's just manifestation is the outcome, magic is more the cause. So it's the cause and the effect there. But what most people, especially in these more woo-woo circles, are missing about the law of manifestation is the component, the essential component of action, right?
Ah, yeah,
They're taking the principle of mentalism,
yeah.
which is the first Hermetic law, which is absolutely very important. And it is the first law for a reason because it's the first cause. Everything begins in the mind first, or it can't exist, whether it's your mind as a little creator or the mind of the all as the grand creator, the grand architect. But just having it as an idea isn't just going to magically make it appear.
No.
No matter how high you resonate your frequency out into you're super beaming it really hard, sitting on your bed, just going like, oh, $1 million. Yes, I deserve it. It's coming to me. And you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment
Yeah,
because you still have to take action because actions are what create effects in reality far more powerful than the mind. The mind is still powerful. And yes, sometimes you can just make like you're thinking about your friend and then they call you. Weird stuff like that happens. But to me, the way I like to look at it, because I'm all about practical, is it's not a strategy,
yeah,
right? You're like, I want this new job. Wishing for it is not a strategy.
no.
Putting pictures of it on a piece of cardboard is not a strategy. Cold calling employers, emailing out your resume, learning new skills, that's a freaking strategy.
Yeah.
It's action.
Thomas Sheridan said that it was something on manifestation. He said that the way that people were using it was like it was a welfare system, and
Yes.
it
Yes.
doesn't work that way. So yeah, thank you for
That
that.
nails it. Yeah, that nails it because it kind of is indicative of, unfortunately, the very childish, like, entitlement mindset
Hmm.
that people have. So many people, they want great things, and that's fine, but they never ask themselves, do I actually deserve it? And I
Hmm.
don't even just mean, are you a good person? Are you nice? Like all of those things. I'm saying, like, say, for example, I want to call in this divine goddess as my life partner who's so conscious and communicates everything and this and that. And it's like, okay, what are you doing to work on yourself to be the person that deserves that woman? Or makes her, like, when she looks at you, think, oh, there's my divine masculine, that I've been looking for. That's the other end of it. Like, this
Hmm.
whole idea of frequency, it works both ways. You can't just like wish for something and be like, oh yes, it's all coming to me and I feel grateful before it's even happened, right? That's how it works. Like, I feel so joyful as if it's already happened, but it's like, what have you done to like actually deserve that? On a like very literal level. Like I
Hmm.
said, I'm not just talking about, are you nice? Have you been through a lot, or I don't know. Hopefully that's making sense of like
Could
a
be
very
training.
like
Yeah,
literal, in a literal way.
could be training towards something, working towards something, learning, all these different things.
Here's a great way that's going to depict what I'm trying to say is like winning the lottery, right?
Hmm.
People want to win the lottery. They want to win all this money and they think, "Oh yeah, I'll like retire my mom and I'll give money to all my friends and all this kind of stuff." There's a statistic that most people that win the lottery end up not only broke but like severely bankrupt and in the hole, worse off than when they had it. Why is that? This is
Hmm.
what I'm getting at. Mindset.
Yeah.
They're still thinking like a poor, and so they're going to like treat the money in the same way. They can't hang on to it energetically. It's going to slip right through their fingers because they're not actually holding the vibration of keeping that.
And it's so true. It is. And speaking of manifestation, your room course is fantastic. I had a look at,
Oh, thank you.
saw some of the videos on there, saw the work, the action that you're putting into this, and it's growing bigger and bigger. Tell us a bit about the runes and just how you got down that part of the journey.
Yeah, thank you. So that was a part of kind of when I started learning about paganism, animism, all of that sort of came into my awareness around the same time. And that's when I really started diving into runes. And to be honest, at first, I took a sort of very shallow, simplistic understanding of the runes, which is okay because you have to start somewhere.
Hmm.
But it was sort of just getting the what I call the crackerjack box version, like just this very, oh, I read it on the back of a cereal box or something, uh ideas about it. And then when you start diving deeper, you start running into all these contradictions. Everybody's saying different things about it, and that now everything you thought made sense doesn't make sense anymore. And so the rune course that I created is sort of my own attempt to be a solution to the problem that I personally encountered when studying the runes and practicing the runes, is sifting through all the noise and just really distilling it down to the most essential parts. So I really just tried to distill it down into the essence, not only each rune individually, like what really does this rune mean? It's almost like it's energetic signature rather than just, oh, it means protection or something, that's so surface level. There's a protection element to it, but what is it really? That's what I really tried to do for each one, but then more importantly, well, maybe not just as importantly, is looking at each rune as a holistic system. All 24 runes, it's a story of initiation, shamanic initiation, right? It's the spiritual journey, the hero's journey.
Hmm.
And it takes you through that piece by piece, starting from the beginning. And so that's how I teach the runes, is distilling them to their essence, but also giving you the roadmap of why use the runes as a system, you know, uh, and what are the different uses. And then in part one, which is rune shamanism, because I'm planning to make two more courses after this that go into divination and magic. This one is all about the introduction to the runes in the way that I just taught, and then how you can use them without even owning a set of runes, simply by chanting or meditating or invoking those energies yourself, because you're a conduit, right? The runes aren't pieces of wood or bone or stone. The runes are building blocks of the universe, and you have access to them, especially through your voice, because they're a language, right? They're an alphabet, and the universe itself was created by sound. So that's
Amazing.
just a little bit of what I get into in the rune course.
Yeah, that
And
is great.
I want to invite you, if you're curious about the runes, but you're not sure, or you don't know me, I get that, or you just want to kind of try it out. I also created a mini course that just teaches the first three runes in the way that I described and how you can begin using those. And then if you like that, then maybe then you can dive into the full course. So
Amazing. Thank you for that. And also, where can people find you and your stuff before, because we're going to end this shortly. So where can people find you?
absolutely. So hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation. If you want to learn more about what I teach, dive into my channel, The Wizard Factory. There's a lot there. I cover all these topics: occultism, natural law, morality, freedom, paganism. I mean, lots and lots of things for just about anyone that actually cares about what we're doing here, in this world. So find me on the mostly YouTube is where mainly I'm focused. I'll have Elona share the link tree in the description. So if you click that, you can see all the links. Find me on your favorite platform. The long form stuff is mostly on YouTube, but you can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and there's more kind of like bite-size pieces of content, nice graphics and memes that I create myself and stuff like that. So yeah, do check that out.
Logan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute honor. We've had some recording problems, which is quite funny. So I wonder what that says about the message here today. But it's all good. We got there. And yeah,
Mm,
I'll put the details below for where you
yeah.
can find Logan. And please do subscribe. And wishing you a wonderful whatever it is that you're doing. Take care.